The speed of communication on social media is so fast that many of us hardly remember the content we consumed this morning. In our age of TikTok and Twitter, we are expected to we're expected to communicate a whole lot within a small window of characters and minutes. Sometimes a few minutes or 120 characters is enough. That's all you need to be able to send that effective message. But other times it really does help to dive a little bit deeper into social media content so we can see the forest for the trees. This series is Beyond the Tweet, a series where we take a viral tweet, we grab a shovel, and we start digging through the layers until we gain a better understanding of the history hidden within the tweet. And today we are talking about the Queen of Congee. All right, so where does this start? All right, where do we begin? Well, I guess we first need to start off at the viral tweet in question. So this was a tweet posted July 16, 2021 by Casey Ho over on Twitter. And it says, so a group of colonizers decided to culturally appropriate Congee. Good Lord. And they posted a variety of photos of this, supposed dish of congee. And this was a white woman's version of congee. Congee is a traditional Asian rice porridge that's been around for thousands of years. And people noticed that, hey, your team, a lot of white folks. Okay, interesting. So they have this company. This is posted on their company Instagram page that is now private. And the page is called Breakfast Cure. And this is a photo of the founder. And the founder is a white woman from Oregon named Karen, the Queen of Congee Taylor. You can see in the caption right over here, meet our founder and Queen of Congee, Karen Taylor. Karen has practiced acupuncture since 1995 and is NCAOM board certified in acupuncture and herbology. Interesting. Okay. And so, my initial reaction to this thing was like, okay, literally, who is this? And my next sort of question was like, okay, well, why do white people, when they're creating their little brands, like why do so many of them put these targets on their backs by claiming authority over POC cultures in this way? Like calling again, if you call yourself the Queen of Congee, if you call yourself the best of anything, the Queen, the King, the Lord of anything, then obviously you're going to have people who are questioning those credentials. And initially, I wanted to write off this story as just like, okay, this is another, appropriator. This is another Karen the colonizer story, about a white person who's like hijacking Asian food. And, for those of you who have been following me for a long time, you know that, when I was working with Neckshark, I had talked about this plenty of times. I talked about this all the time. We've talked about like ramen shops and different Asian dessert shops and different Asian restaurants, and whether it's by regular schmegular white folks in the Midwest who are making these places, or whether it's this rich white lady in upstate New York, or whether it is a celebrity like Andrew Zimmern who created a Asian fusion restaurant called Lucky Cricket, which got dragged a couple years ago. This thing is pretty common, and I learned over the years that like investing too much time can sometimes feel like whack-a-mole. You just feel like, oh my god, there's just too many of them. I can't keep up. And I remember after a while, people started to send me stuff like, hey, I saw what you posted about that Lucky Cricket story. Why don't you go ahead and talk about this place and this place and this place and this place? And again, it was just overwhelming, so I had to step back. And then I saw this tweet. And again, I wanted to dismiss it, but I decided to go beyond the tweet to get a better understanding of where the origin story came from. Because, if this is a recurring issue, because, look, Karen isn't the only or the first or the last. So we need to ask ourselves, like, is there a nest? Is there a factory where these like white, let's just say it, culture vultures, appropriators, whatever it is you want to say, colonizers, whatever it is you want to say, is there a place where these people come from, where it gets made? Like, how, like, Karen didn't grow up with this. Karen didn't. Oh, I grew up on Congee ever since the young days when I was a young Asian girl. So where did you get it from? And where do a lot of these, white folks get this from? Now, over on the Twitters, there was an interesting response. This page, the History of China podcast, which is apparently owned by a white guy who makes podcasts about Chinese history. I mean, take that for, what it is. But this is the tweet of his that got blown up, because he retweeted that initial post by Casey and said, "I'm not sure if I'm less surprised that, one, a woman named Karen decided that congee, just overboiled rice porridge, was the exotic dish she was going to gentrify. Two, China Twitter got up in arms about cultural appropriation of a dish with its roots in southern India." Now, a lot of folks keyed in on the whole China Twitter got up in arms because, again, it's similar to the way that, Karen the Congee Queen is putting a target on her back by establishing herself as this position of authority. The History of China podcast, created by a white guy, saying that Chinese people on Twitter are, basically overreacting, again, is putting a target on your back. And so naturally, people started to track this little conversation, and this person said, "Congee, like any base, is all about what you put in it. By itself, it's rice cream of wheat," which is not. It's like, I mean, I guess if you want to say it's the rice version of cream of wheat, yeah. But yeah, it's not like cream of wheat. By itself, it's rice cream of wheat and deliberately overcooked to those with sensitive tummies. It's great that people of all ages and health levels like it, though. The most offensive thing, of course, is the gall to charge $15 for a bowl of gruel, typically reserved for infants, the sick, and the elderly. And, a lot of folks also mentioned that to just brush it off as if congee is just this thing for babies and sick people, old people, it completely forgets the fact that, congee is, in and of itself, a great meal. Like, it's just good to eat. It's really tasty. And whether you have it for breakfast, for lunch, whether you want it because you're on a budget, like, there's a reason why people have been eating congee for thousands of years in a variety of cultures. And I mean, porridge has been around in a variety of different Asian cultures, not just Chinese. Filipinos, we have lugao, we have, arroz caldo is sort of similar to that. And I know that so many different cultures, from Korea to South America, they have different versions of this type of rice porridge. And so, in looking at this whole story and looking at just these little reactions, I was like, okay, I could stop here and I can just be like, all right, typical Karen, move on. But instead, I wanted to, again, go beyond the tweet. And so we're going to be talking about, what is it? 5 different main discussions, which is, one, what is Breakfast Cure? What is this company? What are they all about? 2, who is the Queen of Congee? See my finger? 3, we need to talk about the business of appropriation. 4, we needed to talk about the Wild West of Oriental medicine. And 5, we need to wrap it up and talk about why does this all matter? All right? Why does it all matter? What is the forest for the trees? What is the perspective that we are missing? All right? Now, I promise you, there's a lot of this. There's a lot in this subject. I thought that I was just like dipping my toes in something and I was going to have a grand understanding of like, oh, okay, well, A, B, C, boom, that's it. But I have even more questions now, and I hope I can inspire some of you to maybe go in your own investigation to learn more about the story, because there's a lot of different social and political elements to this that need to be discussed. All right, so let's start with a very simple question. What is breakfast cure? Well, let's go ahead and zip over to my screen and let's take a look. So this is the website for Breakfast Cure. And you see it's got a nice, fresh and vibrant look. Nice, sort of tropically colors. You got a woman of color over here enjoying her bowl of Breakfast Cure. And as we go down, it says, "Welcome to Breakfast Cure. Free your mornings with hot, healthy, homemade breakfast that cooks while you sleep and heals as you eat. Choose your flavors. Are you tropical, traditional, zesty, savory, all of the above? So many taste sensations to delight the modern foodie palate. Choose one and add water and stir. Cover, plug in, and set to low. Wake up to your hot, handmade breakfast. Awaken to your bowl of zen, nourishing meals based on traditional wisdom." What is Breakfast Cure? Breakfast Cure is a gourmet, foodie version of traditional congee. The original prepackaged and gluten-free congee that conveniently cooks while you sleep and is deliciously designed to delight your modern palate. So there's congee, there's some information about their ingredients, their prep, their satisfaction guarantee, their free shipping. Sounds great, right? Let's go ahead and look at the page, The Wisdom of the Warm. What is this? The Wisdom of the Warm. This is their mission statement. Breakfast Cure creates irresistibly delicious whole food breakfast to give you the fastest homemade meal possible. By design, our simple congee method is spreading the Asian wisdom that warm cooked foods heal, soothe, and energize. You can boost metabolism. It's easy to digest. It's a relaxing start of the day. There's hydration benefits. It's a gentle cleanse. There's a lot going on, right? Okay. Well, I was going to go to the... Oh my God, they even removed it. Holy shit. Oh my God. Time. Oh my God. They know I've been on the site. So there was a tab that said meet the team. And no fucking kidding, a couple hours ago it was up. And when you clicked on it, like an hour ago, it said that the page was closed, and now they just completely removed it. I should have taken a screenshot, but spoiler alert, it's all the team white people. Like there's a operations manager, there are writers, there are marketing people, but they're all white folks. But again, I'm just making a note of the reality. I'm not saying anything yet. I'm not saying anything. All right, let's go ahead and check out Praise for Breakfast Cure. Praise for Breakfast Cure. Don't just take it from us. Find out why these folks love their Breakfast Cure congee. I can go. Normally, I would have coffee and go, but since it's made, I smell it and it reminds me it's there. I take my Breakfast Cure with me and I eat it when I can. I love the speed and metabolism. It's all positive, and I have my appetite back, and I love them. Okay. Now, I was looking through these and reading these, and, it's pretty standard testimonials, and, there's even a little section over here where you have this video of this man with Parkinson's. His name is George, and he's talking about eating congee, and he's talking about the benefits to him, since he has a disability, and it makes it harder for him to digest food, and so congee helps him out. All right, so that's not a problem. I don't have a problem with him eating congee to relieve his health problems. That's a good thing, right? Let's go ahead and take a look. Let's take a look at the menu. So these are the flavors. It's some labels for either if it's gluten free or vegan. You got apple cinnamon. You got coconut blueberry bliss. You got golden spice. You have Karen's Kachari, because Kachari, congee, same difference, right? You have mango sticky rice for, if you want not soupy rice and you want mango sticky rice. Okay. You have masala chai spice. Mega omega. All right, so there's a lot of different flavors, right? You have some of these savory ones, a lot of fruity ones, and a lot of folks have gone into the weeds of like, what is in the ingredients of this? Is this really rice, or is it really, is this just oatmeal? Because there are some of these recipes that basically are, flavored and designed basically like oatmeal. And as far as the menus, I mean, that's about as much detail as I want to go into the ingredients, because I don't think that actually is the bulk of the conversation. And I think the real meat is when we start asking questions about everything else. So let's go ahead and ask ourselves, what's the hook? What is Breakfast Cure's selling points? What are they like advertising in terms of like their benefits or what it is that they do? And so I mapped it out, and Breakfast Cure selling points are as follows. 1, congee is good for digestion and constipation. And that is sort of the main overarching reason, right? Karen had, I think it's so funny that her name's actually Karen. I can actually like faithfully say her name, Karen. Karen spent a lot of time, and she said this specifically, quote, I spent a lot of time modernizing congee for the Western palate. And she did that by doing 3 different things, okay? So she said that she modernized it by she made congee that you can eat and find delicious. She wanted to make congee that doesn't seem foreign. And she also said that she wanted to make congee that delivers all the medicinal healing properties. And a lot of this, as you read some of her different little entries about why she does this, and you go through the different blog posts, a lot of it also seems to be addressing this fact that, American diets are very high in sugar, and these overly processed diets can lead to gut problems and digestive issues. All right. And I actually really like this this tweet by Frankie Huang on Twitter, who said, like a broken record, I must say that it's unbelievably annoying to see white people interpret cultures of millions and billions of living people like they're archaeologists. Being treated like we are dead makes me want to lie down. Now, this keys in on something really important about this idea of being treated like you are dead. And that's one of the things that I think is so prominent about a lot of the ways that Karen starts to talk about congee. So I guess we got to ask yourselves, is it wrong to sell congee? Is it so wrong to just whip up some rice and some freeze-dried fruits and beans and, knickknacks and and some thingamajigs and to throw it in a crock pot? Is it really bad? Is it illegal? No, it's not illegal. It isn't. And that we do need to be able to illustrate, because I think that having a conversation about this by saying that it's wrong because it's just wrong, or that it's wrong because, like, I don't know, I don't like it. Like, we need to be able to investigate a little bit further. Like, what is it that we don't like? Like, and I'm not saying that people who don't like this are wrong. I'm just saying that where there's smoke, there's fire. If you think that there's something wrong about it, we need to sort of like investigate it a little bit more, right? So again, there's nothing illegal or wrong necessarily with selling congee. There's nothing wrong with eating congee or enjoying it or selling it. And so Karen isn't doing anything I got to asterisk this because I'm going to explain it later, but Karen isn't necessarily doing anything that other Asians can't do. So, you know, many of you theoretically can just go into your pantry and like grab some shit, open your bag of Three Ladies rice and, you know, pour it in with some cinnamon and nutmeg and, you know, air fry some apples and throw it in there and be like, it's congee. Cinnamon toast crunch congee. You can do it, right? Technically you can do it. And again, even George, that client of Karen's, who has Parkinson's, was talking about the benefits of it, and I can't honestly be mad at that, right? So what is the problem? And again, I had to keep asking myself, like, what else? Because again, like, having these conversations about cultural appropriation can be so tiring, and you can feel like you're just going around and around and around trying to tell people, like, no, it's not right because, you know, you're erasing the people. And sometimes, like, that conversation, people can't visualize it. They can't see the layers that are all throughout. So, yeah, what is the problem? So let's go into the apparently the person who has the solution, the queen of congee. So let's ask ourselves, who is Karen Taylor? Who is this individual? Well, Karen Taylor is the founder of Breakfast Cure. Karen is a licensed acupuncturist, and Karen just started eating congee 20 years ago during Chinese medical school over in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Now, I want to go ahead and switch over to this quick little video because this is actually an interview with Karen, and I'm sure that some of you actually seen this, so let's go ahead and take a look.
When I was in acupuncture school in about 1993, I had an amazing, young, brilliant American nutrition teacher who taught me about congee. Congee is a traditional Asian rice porridge that's been eaten all over Asia for thousands
Learn congee from an American guy. Cool.
of years. She said, you know, just try it. And I loved it. It was surprising to me how good it felt in my stomach. Congee is like the new frontier. It's the kind of benefit you can get from.
I just want to put a pin in that because I promised you we're going to go back to that, all right? Just please remember that line. Congee is like the new frontier, all right? Just we'll put a pin on that.
From the wisdom of Chinese medicine without going to an acupuncture appointment. You can feel the difference in your stomach and in your intestines and just in your energy in general. Acupuncture school is pretty intense. It's medical school. I was really, really busy. Best thing was that this congee cooked overnight in a slow cooker, and I could eat it in the morning, and I was just running out the door. Fast forward 25 years, and I was still making congee. And then my mom got sick. She ended up dying of complications from constipation, which I know could have been treated with eating congee, such a simple thing. I realized it was my calling to bring this amazing, delicious, convenient, but also medicinal food to America. I needed a method that would allow other people to be confident and comfortable making this sort of weird thing in their own house. I figured out how to package it by making all the ingredients dried. Now people all over are making congee and regularly letting me know how much they love it, how they love the convenience, but how they love how it makes them feel.
A lot of interesting terms. A lot of interesting terms. You know, repackaging congee, new frontier congee, a lot of interesting types of congee that I haven't really heard the new frontier flavor congee before. So, all right, we learned, you know, I guess we learned a little bit about this individual, right? Okay, well, whoops. Let's go into a discussion. Oh, and you know, I'll even say like, even the bit about her mom passing due to constipation. Like I'm not gonna lie. I felt bad. I felt like, okay, you know, if you believe that your mom would have benefited from congee, I can see that. I wouldn't be opposed to your mom or anybody really, again, seeking congee as a way to, you know, get healthier. But again, we can't hang our hats on just that part and just be like, oh my god, it's so mean to be talking about this person. Because again, like, I'm not like, I don't even want to have the dedicate the time to trying to cancel Karen Taylor. I'm like I said before, it's like whack-a-mole. It's not gonna happen. It isn't gonna happen. You know, at the end of the day, it ain't gonna happen. So I'd much rather understand this thing and just educate everybody else so you understand what's going on. So that way we don't feel like we're just like wasting time playing whack-a-mole. But one of the things I wanted to key in on is Karen Taylor's, you know, this reason for doing all of this, right? The reason for why she felt like she was able to create this business, the reason why she was able to talk about some of these things is largely because, you know, Karen Taylor says that she has these credentials as somebody who went to acupuncture school. And this is the little description over here. Good morning, I'm Karen Taylor. I'm the founder of the Breakfast Cure. Today I want to talk to you about congee. Congee is traditional rice porridge that's been eaten all over Asia for hundreds, if not thousands of years. The Breakfast Cure is a modern adaptation of that. I spent a lot of time modernizing it for a Western palate, making a congee that you can eat and find delicious, and that doesn't seem foreign, but delivers all of the medicinal healing properties of this ancient recipe. I started eating congee about 20 years ago when I was in Chinese medical school in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was introduced to the concept of slow cooking grains to make them more easily digestible. I thought that was an interesting concept. What really ignited the fire in me was trying it and feeling how different my digestion felt. I suddenly noticed that my stomach didn't hurt at all. There was no pain, no cramping. In fact, I felt this warm, soothing, comforting, nourishing feeling that just grew the more days in a row that I ate it. That really made me want to find out more about it. I've spent over 20 years trying all these different combinations to find the really tasty, healthy ones that work in our modern world. So, again, there's a lot. There is a lot. There's a lot of information about things that are being said, and you know, a lot of different claims. And so, you know, one of the reasons why, again, she's able to make these claims is because she has that experience at that acupuncture college. And so I was just like, what college? Well, you go to the website, Southwest Acupuncture College, educating today's students in tomorrow's medicine. Now, I'm not a educator. I'm just a marketing and advertising guy, right? So I know a bit about graphics and website design, and I know a bit about Asian culture, considering the fact that I'm Asian. And as a not expert and as someone who's not trying to judge the validity of this college, man, this website's kind of janky. But hey, maybe that's just the style of the designer when they wanted to. We're just gonna throw this big old dragon, and we're gonna. Okay, cool. So Southwest Acupuncture College. Karen graduated there in 1995. That is where she became a licensed acupuncturist, and now she is a licensed acupuncturist in Oregon. Now, again, I want to reiterate, I can't speak to the legality or the validity of this college or even Karen's experience and education because I wasn't there, and I'm not even going to try to even attempt to say that, anything like that. I'm just simply telling you where she went to school, that this is the website, that this is what it looks like, that when you go throughout the website, seems to be a lot of white people. You go through the faculty and the advisory board, and seems to be a lot of white people. Curious. Very curious. And I remember sitting and looking at this website and thinking, what's going on here? Well, let's put a little pin on that. And let's go into our next point, which is on this subject of the modernization of our cultures. We gotta ask, what the hell are these people modernizing? Like, what is this process of? I've heard this so many times throughout my career. We're gonna go ahead and modernize, this ancient culture. We're gonna go ahead and modernize this fashion style that we saw a bunch of black kids and brown kids doing, and now we're going to go ahead and modernize it and bring it to the future. We're going to go ahead and bring it and make it adaptable for everybody else. What is this process of modernizing? Well, so I keep going back to the way Karen said, quote, how I discovered the miracle of Congee and improved. It's a lot. That's a lot in one sentence. How I, Karen, discovered the miracle. As if, like, one, I'm the one who discovered it. Two, that it's a miracle, as if, like, why does this porridge have so many benefits to it? Why does it make my tummy feel good? I don't know. How I discovered the miracle of Congee and improved it. That is the part that we want to talk about. That is a process of modernizing it, right? So, Karen apparently spent a lot of time modernizing Congee for the Western palate. And I was talking a little bit earlier about the 3 ways that she was saying that she modernized it, right? So she said that she was interested in making Congee that you can eat and that people can find delicious. And one, that suggests that authentic Congee can't be eaten because it's not easy to find, aka it's located in an Asian neighborhood. Like, look, when people say, like, especially when white folks say that it's hard to find, like, oh, it's hard to find good Korean food. It's hard to find good Asian food. Like, I don't know. I mean, I obviously it depends on where you live. But we live around the United States. I looked at Eugene, Oregon, where she lives. Yeah, you can find Chinese restaurants there that sell Congee. And so she's also making the suggestion that authentic Congee isn't delicious, or that it's not delicious to a certain audience. I wonder what that audience might be. And number two, Karen also said that she wanted to focus on making kanji that doesn't seem foreign. Now this is like of all the red flags, you had to just like spell it out there, right? She said that she doesn't want kanji to be foreign. Now, what part of the of a bowl of kanji is foreign? It's, I mean, and that's what's so funny about the marketing of breakfast cures, that they talk about it as if it's like it's this very simple, like, oh, this answer was here all the time. These fucking Asian people were doing it for 1,000 years. All they did was just overboil some rice. It's basically cream of wheat. And so they talk about it in this like, okay, you know, just this whatever kind of a thing. And yet it's also foreign and it needs to be changed and modernized. And really, when we're talking about the things that are foreign that need to be adapted, we're really talking about, one, texture and consistency. White folks, white American taste buds, and if you're looking at just white American food culture, a lot of this culture isn't used to a lot of different flavors or spices or ingredients. I mean, it's why we talk about, you know, the prevalence of white people who can't, you know, handle spices. It's just not in their culinary repertoire. And so part of that is textures. Like there's a lot of different Asian foods that have different textures that are like more gelatinous or more rubbery or more chewy or more silken or more runny. And, you know, a lot of the truth is a lot of food cultures outside of white people are so much more sophisticated in terms of like their willingness to try different cooking methods and ingredients and different dishes, whereas, you know, the modern white American diet is heavily processed. It goes through an extensive food supply chain, and so, you know, because of that, we can understand why Karen positioned herself as this Asian food expert, because, you know, it's a way of solving America's problem when it comes to access to food. And again, one of those aspects that is difficult to translate is consistency. And a lot of white folks just aren't used to foods that are like runny or more soupy, like congee, which is kind of funny because they will also be okay with like cream of mushroom soup or clam chowder, which is like, if you can eat clam chowder, if you can eat oatmeal, then why is congee so foreign, you know? And so, yeah, like all the different foreign parts that she's really talking about are like texture and consistency. And then we're also talking about flavor, all right? Because when it comes to flavor, white Americans aren't really used to savory breakfasts that are more lighter in flavor. Like a lot of typical American breakfasts tend to be very savory, meaty dishes, like, you know, ham, steak, and eggs, and sausage links, and bacon. And then the other half of that is like very sugary, cakey, desserty types of breakfasts. Whereas in a lot of other countries, they have a variety of different breakfast foods that are also very savory. And so that's why you'll see porridges throughout Asia. And obviously the other thing is that makes a dish seem foreign is the culture and the origin. And I think that is probably one of the most problematic aspects of like, why are you trying to remove that aspect? If you're supposedly trying to celebrate it, if you're trying to celebrate this different country and this different culture, why are you trying so hard to modernize it and trying to assume that it needs to be fixed? Because then, again, you're putting another target on your back and asking, what do you think needs to be fixed about it? Why do you think Congee is wrong? And why do you think that you can do it better? And 3, we also have the process of making congee that delivers all the medicinal and healing properties of congee, all right? And again, it's just one of those things it's another case of white folks feeling like they can take the culture, discard all of the parts that they don't like, keep all the parts that they do like. And really, the process of modernizing, of polishing and taking something ancient and putting a new spin on it is just typical cultural appropriation. Modernization is the process of breaking the cultural links that are associated with the people of color who are the innovators of that said culture. And by doing that, you make that piece of culture, you make that idea, you make that thing, that food, that music, that dance, you make it blank. You make it, I remixed it and I changed it up a little bit, so technically it's not even Chinese people's kanji, it's my kanji. And by doing that, you make it thus more easily consumable within a white supremacist capitalist system. Because again, that is the reason why you want to whitewash something, because you want it to be adaptable for the white audience. And the reason why you want to adapt for the white audience is because you feel that that is the primary target that will spend the money to buy your product. So let's go into an article that I found that was actually talking about this subject. And it was titled Lost in the Brine. And this is a article published in Eater by Min Chan. And in this article, they're talking about the way the fermentation industry, fermentation, like whether you're making miso, whether you're making kimchi, like that's a process of fermentation, of aging foods, transforming them, pickling them, making them something new. Within this article, I learned a lot of different things. I want to go ahead and key in on them. But first off, I learned that the Western market for fermented products is expected to reach $690 billion by 2023. And this is all through the process of, discovering and modernizing and selling these fermented products that were originally from these, indigenous POC communities. And this is everything from kombucha to kimchi to miso to tempeh to koji, tepache, iru, injera, pozol, dosas, and tibikos. So these are all different types of fermented beverages or dishes or condiments. And many of these white-owned businesses that appropriate these ancient sort of fermentation cultures will advertise the benefits of their products. And what they'll do is they will distance themselves from the cultural origins of these people and the origins of these cultures and the history and the context and also the politics of it. And so, in terms of fermentation, I will say that, no one owns the idea of fermenting. No one is like, okay, you can't pickle because we pickled first. Like, cultures all over the world, including white folks, they pickle shit. I get it, But there are some things within this article that I think really stand out in terms of explaining, like, what exactly is going on. You have this quote over here. At almost every level, success is determined by white gatekeepers, from which companies gain access to capital, to who organizes festivals and teaches workshops, to who gets spotlighted by the food media or given book contracts or space on grocery store shelves. And so the dominance of Orientalism and the whole exotic foreigner culture stereotype, a lot of these things are used during the marketing of these products. And when you do that, that oftentimes will strip away the humanity from the real people and the real cultures where these things came from. You're not talking about how so many different foods are connected to a struggle or connected to, a group of people who didn't have anything and who had to resort to decades or centuries of cultural research and cultural preservation in order to be able to have these recipes for them to exist today. And so, just saying, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go make miso, or I'm going to go ahead and make kimchi, and I'm just going to be like, oh, well, I added cinnamon to the kimchi, it's mine now. Again, distances, by doing this, you distance yourself from the origins of that culture. And again, without real knowledge of the food, a lot of these different white-owned businesses will lean on Orientalism to justify this whole Asian wisdom behind their logic. By saying that they are, dealing with these, superfoods, these wild and interesting and foreign and exotic ingredients that you've never heard about before, that in and of itself becomes the reason why people want to pick up that product. It's not because, oh, well, kimchi is like this fantastic dish that originated in Korea and there's a lot of history behind it and there's a lot of different variations behind it. No, instead we're just going to sell it as a weight loss supplement. And then we have this quote over here. In playing up one's cultural background to sell a product, you create an illusion of culture, a curated flavor profile that will be accepted and enjoyed. The chaotic, stinky, and messy are edited out of this scenario for the benefit of both the performer and the consumer. And I love this idea of editing out people of color to create this illusion of culture, to create this illusion of this handcrafted, artisanal, these elite tasted, people who traveled far and wide and discovered this wisdom from the magical land of Asia and brought back these jewels of wisdom for you all. Again, it's marketing. It's fucking marketing. You can get that. You can get the same ingredients at Whole Foods or from the Asian market, but at the end of the day, it's just marketing. And so, by setting the goalpost within the confines of white taste buds, by having all these different white people who are essentially becoming the faces of these POC food cultures, they are the ones who become the tastemakers. They are the ones who sort of set these standards of what kombucha is supposed to taste like, or what price you need to sell your kimchi for. And by setting that goalpost, you again create within the marketplace, you create this hierarchy where authentic recipes by Black and Indigenous people of color are not only expected to be priced lower, but they're also given less priority space on shelves. They're also given less space when it comes to marketing opportunities. They're also given less space in magazines and awards and competitions. So again, this is a lot more than just white people making kimchi. What's wrong with me cooking food? It's not just about cooking food. I don't care if you cook kimchi at your house. That isn't necessarily the problem. And when Black and Indigenous people of color, when we share our creations, we are expected to stick to this very traditional or this limited type of branding that positions our brand as if it's foreign, as if it's like, oh, that's the weird one. And if you're not positioned that way, if you don't position yourself in that regard, marketers, people who are distributors, people who will actually give you that shelving space will just be like, oh, I don't get it. I don't get your brand. What is this? What is this? What is this Asian thing? I don't know what it is. And in contrast, white folks don't have to do that. White folks don't have to necessarily explain what is your tie to kimchi? What is your tie to congee? And again, that is just a very opposite experience for a lot of people of color. And so white-owned businesses have so much more access to social and political and financial capital to take their brands, take our recipes, and turn a profit. But let's go into just a couple of little examples of some of these masters of Asian culture. So you got George Thomas, who's known as the Kombucha King, who owns 40% of the $500 million kombucha market, even though kombucha is a Chinese in origin. You also have Chris DeBono, who calls himself the Miso Master, who is the owner of a company called Meru Miso, and he apparently he's the miso master, but he's only been making miso since 2015. I mean, I guess cool. And then obviously, how can we forget the ultimate example of the Asian master, Rex Kwon Do. All right, now let's go ahead and go into the wild west of Oriental medicine. Now, first, let me go ahead and read just a couple comments. Again, we have a lot to sort of cover. Edward says, Arroz caldo plus pan de sal is my combo. Oh, I love arroz caldo. Jennifer says, they love our culture and our food, but they won't want us. Mariposa says, also random. Has anyone tried lugao? It's a Pinoy style congee. So yummy, especially the egg. Yes, I love lugao. I haven't had it in a long time, though. Kundan said, modernizing equals colonizing/capitalizing by first destroying or minimizing cultural roots. 100%. Again, that is like in activist spaces, the word colonizer gets used a lot, but the act of colonization, the act of not just, entering into a culture or community, pretending that you own this place and displacing these people, whether physically by killing them or displacing their culture, part of that process is the erasure of those people. So it's not just about, I'm going to steal your culture. It's, I'm going to steal your culture, and then I'm going to tell everybody else that, either this isn't actually your culture, or I'm going to tell people that this was your culture, but I perfected it. I made it better. Obviously, it was flawed because you're ethnic and you just got those weird taste buds and that weird ass culture, and we need to modernize it. We need to freshen it up. We need to make sure that we can talk about it on The View and Jimmy Fallon Tonight. None of that Fear Factor shit. That congee with how it normally is with green onions. Weirdos. The erasure of the culture is critical to that process. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the Wild West of Oriental medicine. Now, this was another realm that I was sort of like, do I really want to go into this? Do I really want to go into this? I think I kind of should go into this. And it starts off with this article written by Karen Taylor. This is published in the Pacific College of Health and Science. And the article is titled, Our Congee Calling. All right. So, zooming in on this bad boy a little bit. Sorry. All right. Let's go read a little bit about this. Due to today's fraught political climate and frenzied pace of life, Americans are experiencing increased levels of worry and stress. The New York Times recently reported that in the United States, about 55% of adults said they had experienced stress during a lot of the day prior, compared with just 35% globally. Statistically, that put the other country on par with Greece, which had led the rankings on stress since 2012. And just as a note, you notice how in this photo, she actually has a photo of real congee with the Chinese donuts and everything, with the green onions and the ginger inside. Like, can't find that on her website. As physicians of Asian medicine, we are aware of the epidemic levels of digestive stress. We understand the strain this cultural climate has put on our digestion, but we also provide treatment that reduces stress and protects the spleen against the detrimental effects of so much worrying. To meet the demands of today, our remedy must be quick, easy, convenient, and accessible. But it must also be warm, whole, slow, soothing, healing, and agreeable to the average person. The solution is thousands of years old, and it's been in our doctor's bag all along. Congee is that simple wisdom. Now, I'm not going to read through this whole entire thing because, again, you can get a gist of what she's saying based off of her website, a lot of the same content. And I found this link while reading some of the blog posts that she was sharing. And again, same story about I started off in acupuncture. I learned about Congee 20 plus years ago. I started eating Congee for 27 years. Congee's good for digestion. Boom, 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 boom. Eat Congee. Okay, cool. Well, what I noticed was at the very bottom of her article, she added 2 references. One reference was for the, her opening paragraph where she was talking about stress in America. Well, she quoted a New York Times article. But the other thing she quoted was a book. Like, what book is this? I looked it up. And it was a book called The Book of Juk by Bob Flaws. And if you look at it, The Book of Juk, a healthy alternative to the typical Western breakfast, Chinese medicinal porridges. Now, juk, from my understanding, is translates to congee, porridge. And I just find it interesting that, okay, so she's, basically like quoting off of this dude, like essentially breakfast cure must have been this thing that happened where she went to acupuncture school. She found out about this person named Bob Flaws and realized, wow, this is a fucking good idea. This is a damn good idea. And oh my god, I forgot to add the picture, but here, let me show you real quick. So this is the description on Goodreads. Synopsis: these Chinese medicinal porridges, called juk in Cantonese. Oh, sorry, I need my white guy voice. These Chinese medicinal porridges, called juk in Cantonese and congee, or porridge in English, can be a healthy alternative to the Western breakfast. Cooked in a crock pot overnight and combining specific grains, vegetables, meats, eggs, or various Chinese herbs, there are medicinal porridges for every type of ailment. Included are hundreds of herbal porridge recipes for both prevention and remedial purposes. This book is great for laypersons as well as professional readers. Interesting. Okay, well, she quoted her source, and I guess I don't have a problem with that, right? Now let's go in a little bit deeper, all right? Let's talk about the place where she actually published that article. Pacific College of Health and Science. Okay. So we learned a little bit about the college that she went to and the interesting website, the interesting website design. But what about this college that published this article from her? Because, the article was a straight up plug. But, I don't necessarily disagree with information like saying that it's good to eat warm and moist. Can't believe saying that in actual sense. Moist food is good for your digestion and can stimulate good gut health. I get it. Cool, right? So, Pacific College of Health and Science. Now, when I went on the website, you do some digging. It says that they're accredited. I don't know the nature of the accreditation. You're free to go ahead and look into that. They have locations in San Diego, in New York, in Chicago. But upon researching, I found out something interesting about Pacific College of Health and Science. And that is that that's not even their real name. Similar to the way that Karen modernized Congee, Pacific College of Health and Science modernized their name because they used to be called Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. Found this article from Cision, a PR newswire, saying Pacific College of Oriental Medicine to change name to Pacific College of Health and Science. When I was looking at it, their purpose was to be more inclusive and more aware of diversity. And so, it's smart to remove the association with Oriental, since that's an antiquated term. And so again, I was just like, okay, well, what the fuck? What's up with this Oriental medicine thing? Maybe I need to. I haven't even really looked into that because I was like, okay, well, I don't want to just flat out say, oh my God, Oriental medicine, Chinese medicine, oh, it's this hoax. Because I don't believe that. I believe that, there are different forms of medicine, and there are a lot of Chinese folks who, are legitimate doctors who understand how to use herbology and different forms of more traditional medicine. But I still had to ask I still had this wondering of like this, this farm, this factory, this place where you have all these white people who are, being, sent off with all these different credentials about being these experts at Asian culture, Asian medicine, Asian food. And that's when I also found this article from Wellgood. And, whoops, is that the one? Oh, whoops, sorry. Yeah, so I found this article on Wellgood. This is published, written by Serafina Xiao, and the writer is interviewing the person on the corner over here, Dr. Tasmin Lee, who is an Asian American doctor of Chinese medicine. And this was a fascinating conversation because there's a lot of insight talking about just this idea of like whitewashing within Eastern medicine, Asian Chinese medicine. Quote, "We first need to look back at the history of American acupuncture. Chinese immigrants brought it to the U.S. in the 1800s. In the 1960s, when the Immigration Act was enacted, removing previous quotas on immigrants from Asian and Arab countries, acupuncturists from Vietnam, Japan, Korea, and China moved to the U.S., and the black and brown community started to hear about acupuncture, right? So this is, starting all the way from the 1800s all the way to also the 1960s. Continuing on. Around the 70s, heroin use was killing people in black and brown communities, and the government wasn't helping them. So the Black Panthers and Young Lords in New York City took over Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx, bringing in their community members that were detoxing or had substance abuse. The leaders of these two organizations had studied with Chinese and Vietnamese practitioners in Canada and China and brought acupuncture back into their community. They started doing something called NADA, which is a type of detox protocol using auricular acupuncture associated with benefits for addiction recovery. But at the same time, 4 or 5 white men from UCLA were also interested in acupuncture. They had the means to create schools, regulations, and licensing. Asian acupuncturists were being arrested because they weren't so-called licensed. These guys from UCLA had professionalized this medicine, but as they were professionalizing it, it became elitist. Asian immigrants who weren't able to speak or study in English weren't licensed, and the Black and Puerto Rican community were unable to pay for these types of schools and licensing, so they couldn't practice the medicine. More white folks were practicing it because they could afford it and spoke English. Generations of people that come from the same community were sharing it with the same community without offering it to other communities. I think that's embedded in our education and medical training. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And this was what I was looking for. This was the point, the nugget that I was trying to search for of like, why is there this discrepancy between, the way that white folks are able to take our cultures and just turn bank out of it, whereas when we do it, it's not the same. And similar to this conversation that is happening, we have to have this discussion about the way that, in talking about the Immigration Act of 1965. So one of the things that you need to understand about Asian American history and immigration is that the Immigration Act of 1965 fundamentally changed the types of types of Asian people that came to the United States, not as a testament to being like, oh, the quality of the people or anything like that, any of that fucked up shit, but it has more to do with like the types of professions. Because when the Immigration Act passed, it allowed for higher skilled labor to be more easily immigrated into the United States. And so this is the reason why you have Filipino nurses or Indian engineers or Chinese doctors, because oftentimes we have people of color will have this thing where it's like, oh, well, Filipinos in America are just really good at nursing. Whereas the reality is, not to say that we're not good at nursing, but it's just that the laws created that loophole. So nursing was a gateway to get to the United States. And through that, because of that gateway, you had more Filipino Americans who were like, okay, well then I want to go to America, therefore I should become a nurse. And so prior to that, there were so many Asian people who immigrated to the United States with their credentials, who were doctors, who were engineers, who were architects, who were scientists, who were skilled at what it is that they were doing. But when they came to the United States, their credentials were denied. And there are so many stories of, Chinese families who immigrated to the United States with, educated parents, but then in the United States, since their credentials didn't carry over, since they couldn't practice any of their, their expertise, that's why so many of them got into opening up restaurants, opening up convenience stores or laundromats, because that, for a lot of these people, it wasn't even their dream. It wasn't even what they wanted to pursue. And so, again, not to say anything about, Asian-owned restaurants or these types of businesses, and not trying to say that all of them are like that, but that is a common thread throughout the history of the people who created those businesses. Whereas, again, you contrast it with these white folks, and they can just come in and position themselves as, oh, well, I'm the expert. I'm the one who's teaching this class. I'm going to go ahead and write a book on it. And again, this conversation is basically saying that within acupuncture, white people basically just position themselves as, oh, well, those black people, like those Black Panthers, they're doing acupuncture. It looks like more people who are not Asian are doing acupuncture. Therefore, I feel like I can go ahead and make some money off of it. And the best way that I can make money off of it is I'm going to go ahead and place myself as the gatekeeper. I'm going to go ahead and place myself as a person who knows everything about acupuncture, and all of you other people don't know shit. All right. Whoops. Oh my God, did I miss a couple things? Okay, yeah. So I want to show you this article over here. I don't know if we'll have full time to read it, but I think we might be able to. So this is an article in whereyourvoicemagazine.com, and this one's posted by a guest writer titled "White People Are Commodifying Chinese Medicine Just Like They Did with Yoga." So let's go ahead and read this real quick. Oh, this is by Sally Yulin. Quote, "Have you tried acupuncture yet? I overheard one white girl ask another. Frowning skeptically, I thought to myself, first they come for our food and now our medicines too." Oops, let me zoom in a little bit so you can all read this. For someone like me, a Han Chinese woman who grew up with traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, the increasing trendiness of some TCM practices, such as acupuncture, makes me uncomfortable and concerned. When I was a little girl, my mother would feed me candies between sips of kammo tea to coax me into drinking the bitter medicine. My popo would rub my forehead tenderly with tiger balm when I had a headache. Of course, we did use Western medicine, such as birth control and immunizations, but only when absolutely necessary. In the past few years, TCM has become more popular with non-Asians across North America, which makes me worry that it is becoming commodified in a similar way as yoga. If so, who is telling the stories behind this ancient tradition, and who gets to make money off of it? For example, the increasing popularity of the cupping technique among swim bros and white celebrities is intriguing for many white people who view it as an odd curiosity to gawk at. These articles may be well-intentioned and the readers genuinely curious, but they still other those of us who have been using cupping for generations. It shows how many non-Asian clients see TCM as an exoticized alternative to their sterile and familiar Western medicine. But for us Asians, these practices that we grew up with are often what we are most comfortable with. Herbal teas and tiger balm are what we turn to when we are feeling unwell. Their taste and scents carry deep emotional meanings, family stories, and connections to our culture's philosophical and religious beliefs. Chinese medicine is such an important part of my life and my identity. So when I see it become a white people trend, I immediately have a lot of questions. Let's first look at who gets to tell these stories. The schools that offer Oriental medicine degrees often employ white teachers and practitioners. Are these really the right people to be sharing the historical, religious, philosophical basis of TCM with their predominantly white students? Asians have to work harder in white spaces to prove our abilities. So why shouldn't white people have to work harder in Asian spaces to prove their credibility? We must challenge these white TCM teachers, practitioners, and test their worth in order to keep them accountable. We need to be protective of our medicinal heritage and be cautious of white people who want to discover these practices and claim it as their own, just because they find it interesting. Based on a quick Google search of my mid-sized city on the west coast of Canada, almost 80% of health clinics offering acupuncture were owned, operated, and staffed by white people. Not surprisingly, too many of the clinics displayed Oriental symbols such as the yin and yang and Chinese characters and a big old gold dragon as a way to signal authenticity to their clients, many of whom have a limited understanding of the linguistics and philosophical religious context of TCM. This is similar to trends in foodie culture where ethnic foods were once deemed gross by white kids are now the latest craze. Similarly, when I was growing up, gua sha and cupping were seen as strange by the non-Asian kids I went to school with. But now, many millennials are flocking to acupuncture clinics and drinking goji berry teas. Yet it is hard not to tisk at ignorant white tourists mesmerized by the vivid colors and smells in the family-owned herbal shops in our quickly gentrifying Chinatowns, rudely giggling at the curiosities. Okay, yes, even though I am only in my late 20s, I have become that Asian auntie, standing by the bulk ginseng bins, clucking at the caucasity. But is it Oriental medicine? But is Oriental medicine just Chinese tradition? Asia is a big place with many groups of people who share a long and often messy history spanning thousands of years. By calling these medicinal practices Chinese, it erases the many other folk traditions that have influenced each other through cross cultural sharing of medicinal knowledge and practices. And there's a little bit more here, but yeah, basically we get the gist of it. One of the things that I really want to focus on is just this question of like who gets to make money off of the culture, because that I think is the foundational aspect of this whole discussion of cultural appropriation, and the reason why we're even talking about these things, is the fact that at the end of the day, these cultures do belong to specific people. They do belong to a specific culture. And unfortunately, with the way that capitalism and colonization is set up, it's very big business in America to just go to a different, ethnic country, to pick up a couple ingredients over there that you can't find in the United States, and to sell them as a magic elixir, a magic potion that will solve all of your problems. And it ultimately leads to, again, who is making money off of this culture? Because even when Asian people are out here selling their own, cultural dishes, we have to make it seem people make it seem as if it's too weird or bizarre. But as soon as white people do it, it magically transforms into this thing that is like, oh, it's worthy of money. It's worthy of recognition within the marketplace. And so I guess, I have to also ask, what is culture? Because one of the problems about cultural appropriation is that these cultures aren't protected by copyrights. They aren't protected from a legal standpoint. And so a lot of these white folks can just do this, no consequences at all. They can just make entire industries, entire colleges based off of this kind of thing. And they can be the judge, the jury, and the executioner within this whole entire thing. And ultimately, they can go off and get these credentials. They can copyright their ideas and they can protect themselves. But for the indigenous people who created these cultures, they can't. And so ultimately, they don't make any money. It's usually people who steal these ideas, the ones who do. Now, I wanted to also go and look at this. Close that thing. I wanted to look at this little website over here with some data on acupuncture and Oriental medicine. All right, so in 2019, acupuncture and Oriental medicine in the United States, they had 2,067 people who graduated 2019 within this field. The average wage is $77,000. The average employee age is 42. Now, if we're looking at diversity, female employees are more likely to hold health degrees, and white students are the most common race ethnicity group awarded degrees. Now, let's go into institutions. This little section over here has a very convenient little breakdown of the total of the biggest players within this space of Oriental medicine. And guess who has the biggest box? Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. Remember, that was the company that changed their name to Pacific College of Health and Sciences. So, what you learn is Karen is just a in this whole entire sea. She is just a drop of sand within this enormous industry. And again, I don't want to. I don't have, the resources at the moment to really like dig into this, and I don't. Maybe someone else can do this. But you think about these predominantly white institutions, taught by predominantly white academics, teaching books written by a lot of these white folks. A lot of these graduates are white folks who are selling products to white folks, all under the guise of Oriental medicine. And luckily, I found a very great little paper where someone was talking about this. And it's right here. Written by Tyler Fan, who is a doctor now, graduated from UCL. And this is their thesis paper that they wrote for their Doctor of Philosophy. And this was published in 2017. And let me just read the abstract of this, because I need to read through this myself, because this looks absolutely fascinating. But just check this out. Abstract. Oops, let me zoom in. This thesis explores the power structures which shape Chinese medicine in the United States. Chinese medicine had two incarnations. Migrant Chinese practice in its professionalized form. From the 1880s to the 1940s, Chinese medicine was practiced by the Chinese diaspora to serve their communities and non-Chinese settler populations. From the 1970s outward, Chinese medicine professionalized under the agency of acupuncture. Through the regulation of acupuncture, groups of predominantly white Americans began to create standards of practice based on the enactment of what I have referred to as Orientalized biopower. Orientalized biopower is a process where America's predominantly white counterculture began to encompass an Orientalism, which romanticized a form of Chinese medicine constructed in the 1950s by the People's Republic of China called Traditional Chinese Medicine, TCM. With the adoption of TCM in the United States, they also formulated measures which marginalized Asian practitioners. The profession then labeled itself as Oriental medicine, embodying Edward Said's concept of Orientalism. Along with this form of Orientalism, the counterculture used the state to push for a standardized epistemology of TCM. In return, the state encompassed standardized Chinese medicine as element of biopower. My research is informed by a cross-country ethnography of schools, regulatory bodies, and private practices around North America. Through my investigation, I discover the power structures of Chinese medicine contained within the regulatory bodies and schools are mostly dominated by white Americans. Combined, they construct a profession and determine the legitimate and illegitimate forms of Chinese medicine, which constitutes the criteria for who can and cannot practice legally in the country. Woohoo! So this was the big find that I had over here, because someone who is a doctor who specializes and understands Chinese medicine, who talks about this, who is an Asian person, wrote their thesis paper on this, talking about the prevalence of white people and the way that they, use the professionalization or the modernization as a way to determine who was the legitimate Chinese medicine practitioner and who was illegitimate, and what was the key thing that allowed you to be legitimate and not legitimate. It was access to these schools. And if you look throughout this article and you type in the word arrested, you find some interesting things. you learn about the way that as this whole professionalization of acupuncture started to come about, that is when Chinese physicians who now became illegitimate, they started to get arrested. Their places started to get shut down. And it wasn't because, they were doing something shoddy. It was because now the people who were in charge of authorizing these businesses in the first place were predominantly white, and they had pushed out actual people who were Chinese medicine experts. And again, like you can look through this whole entire document. It's 286 pages long of receipts. I don't think that I need to read through this whole thing, but I will drop a link. Let me go ahead and actually drop a link right now if anybody's interested. There you go. Go ahead and check that out. But yeah, type in the word arrested and you'll see all these different stories of different Chinese folks who were arrested for practicing their culture. All right. Well, now we got to go to our last section over here, which is, why does this even matter? Okay, why do we care? Why are we even talking about this? Why are we spending 2 hours to talk about this shit, right? Well, first let's talk about white brands and white audiences. Because whenever people talk in favor of capitalism, they often mention that the marketplace is this arena for meritocracy, that it's totally fair. All is fair in business, right? Just business. And these people position the marketplace as this neutral battleground where everything is fair and equal and we all have equal opportunities and all you need to do is lift yourself up by the bootstraps. If I can go ahead and make Congee and make a business out of this, you can do it too. And unfortunately, this perspective fails to address the inherent bias and inequality within marketplaces, because markets can be biased against people of color, against women, against queer communities, against folks with disabilities. Just because you have things that are available for purchase and these products that are available to anybody doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually truly equitable. And you can even just, throw in healthcare. And the fact that healthcare is a right, everyone deserves healthcare, but does everyone have the same access to healthcare? Does everyone get the same quality of healthcare? Does everyone get treated the same within the healthcare industry? No. And so whiteness is a massive advantage within all American marketplaces. Pretty much all of them. And so outside of just these marketplaces where white folks create products and services, there are also these governing organizations that are responsible for the authorization, the certification. You have these companies that, give out awards and host competitions and host events, and these different companies that create media and press and publicity. There are competitions within stores for priority shelving space, and there are also audiences that are highly biased as well. So to say that, this type of whitewashing doesn't do anything omits the fact that it has a profound impact on the marketplace, and multiple marketplaces. Now let's go into colonizer cuisines of America, because when it comes to colonizer cuisines, Karen Taylor, again, isn't the first. She isn't the only one, and she's not the last person to do this kind of stuff. It is an incredibly common move for white business owners to take elements of an indigenous culture that they know nothing about and to create a business with only the parts that they like. One of the most infamous ones that I've talked about at length is the way that white American people, came back from the war came back from their experiences in Hawaii and said, "Oh my gosh, I know everything about Hawaiian culture. Let me go ahead and start making these businesses." And that is the birth of the American tiki restaurant. The bizarre, oh my god, super bizarro type of genre of food where they really exoticize this idea of the tropical Hawaii experience. And these restaurants were places where, wealthy white folks can escape from their busy jobs and, cut loose, hang out, and have a blast, tap into your savage nature. Like, that's how these tiki bars used to be marketed, as this place where you can, go and have authentic Hawaiian food, which is really funny because it was actually like gentrified Chinese food. Like, if you actually go to the websites of these places that used to open up, like Trader Vic's, their original menus, the Mai Kai, their original menus, a lot of it is like Chinese fried rice, which is just like it's so confused, and whether you're talking about tiki restaurants, whether you're talking about the scores of Asian fusion restaurants, whether you're even talking about the genre of new American food, period, colonizer cuisines in America are a key staple of our food culture. And now let's go ahead and talk about why any of this is happening, why this conversation is important, why it's happening at all. And that's because the market for people of color, the audiences, us, you, me, people on this page, in this community, we're speaking up. We are speaking up. And social media has allowed all of us to step into our roles as critics and members of our own cultural communities. And this gives us the space to represent and speak up for our cultures. So instead of just having, this passive experience where people are just gentrifying our culture, now we have this opportunity to actually say something and say, actually, you think that you're the king of this or the queen of that or the lord of this? I have news for you. And so if white people want to, market themselves as these gurus, these kings, these queens, these gods, these colonizers of POC cultures, then they will have to stand up to the scrutiny and the standards of these indigenous communities and these people that created the culture that they stole to begin with. And that brings me to my next section, which is Karen Taylor doesn't need Orientalism to sell oatmeal. At the end of the day, look, first off, unless it's Congee, which most of the shit she's selling is not, if it's not Congee, if you're not making it this, rice-based porridge that's savory, then you're not making Congee. You're making porridge. And, to be frank, at the end of the day, what she's doing is she has a business where she's selling to people who have various health conditions, whether it's digestive problems or whatever. And she's selling them this remedy of this instant Congee. And like I said, there's nothing illegal or inherently, I can say, wrong about just selling Congee or making Congee or promoting Congee, but it's everything that we've talked about. I like I said, I don't want to target just Karen because she isn't, the mastermind behind this thing. How can I blame her as the sole mastermind, or even as a leading figure, when she is simply regurgitating the things that she said from the Book of Juk, or the colleges that she went to, or the communities that she's been part of. And so, I was going through her Instagram page of Breakfast Cure, and I noticed one little tiny bitty post that said, "Stop Asian Hate. We stand with the AAPI community." There's also one on Black Lives Matter, but it was just one post, just one little post, just a little post, just a little blurb, But other than that, it's time for that modernization. Time Time to polish up those sandwiches, right? Now, as I promised you all, remember when I told you to put a pin on that whole line that Karen said, where she said Congee is like the new frontier? Woo! We're bringing it back. All right. So she said Congee is like the new frontier. Now, the implication of that phrase is, I am a revolutionary healthcare expert who specializes in Oriental medicine, and I have discovered the secret to transforming the icky and gross texture and flavors of Chinese juk. And I've elevated the flavors and textures into a complex and modern blend of culinary art and traditional Chinese medicine. That is the implication. That is the brand feel that she's going for. But what's the reality? The reality is, I received my acupuncture credentials from a predominantly white Chinese medicine school, and I used that experience and parlayed that expertise into making a Congee business, because I realized that it's really easy to market this thing, and I can make a profit off of selling artisanal oatmeal to white folks with indigestion problems. Now, again, like I said, can't fully blame her since she is a gear within the system. But I did want to point out some of these little quotes that she said. Chinese medicine provides us a vantage point, aka a branding opportunity, that allows us to see beyond trendy fads and draw instead upon our beautiful time-tested traditions. The pioneers. What's a synonym for pioneers? The pioneers among us who brought our medicine to the West. That brought our medicine to the West. Like Bob Flaws, shared so much wisdom with early acupuncturists here. The Book of Juk, first published the year I graduated from Southwest Acupuncture College, was an early English language resource that opened the path for us to embrace. Because previously we didn't like it, right? To embrace this healing medicinal porridge. The book's tagline even suggests Congee as a healthy alternative to the typical Western breakfast. I imagine that, like me, many among us have tried and failed to get patients to make Congee a home. Compliance is the key, as well as the greatest challenge. I had the same issue when I first started my practice with a full loose herb pharmacy. Now we have the option of so many easy-to-make, high-quality Chinese herbal formulas that compliance isn't much of a barrier. So you can see that basically what she's saying is that because she wanted to help out her clients with digestive problems and they weren't, keen on this idea of Congee and that it was too foreign and too weird, she had to transform it to be this Americanized thing that would fit for white people's palates. And I think when you look at sort of the greater implications of this thing, I think it's important to look back at Bon Appetit. And Bon Appetit and this idea of these white foodies being these experts on POC food. If you're not familiar, American media has a very long history of white people trying to be experts at our cultures, whether it is Paula Deen, whether it is Rick Bayless. There are plenty of them that I know that you can name drop. And recently there was a lot of controversy at Bon Appetit because their editor-in-chief, I believe, Adam Rappaport, was exposed. He had this photo released of him in the back in brownface trying to be this Latino gangster guy. And through that incident, there was a lot of stuff being exposed about Adam and the way that they ran the company Bon Appetit and the way that they used people of color in their videos, like Sola, who is photoed in the bottom over there. They use these different people of color to add that flavor, to add that authenticity, to add that little ethnic flair to make their recipes seem much more authentic. And when it was exposed, they found out that all of the white people on Bon Appetit were getting paid much more than the people of color. And the people of color were constantly being featured in their videos, constantly being this little expert on, oh, I'm going to tell you how to use spices. I'm going to tell you how to do this. I'm going to tell you how to do that. But despite being the fact that they were experts, they weren't paid. That was the issue. Whoops. Oh my God. I didn't change that quote. The quote is, well, the quote should be, news of misconduct services. So this is in response to the whole Adam Rappaport being canceled thing. Public ire culminates in an apology, sometimes paired with a resignation. Publications and popular industry figures herald the work of overlooked voices. Sometimes a person of color is installed in the vacated role. The news churns, the scandal recedes, and the table is cleared. And it's just this idea of whenever these people do get exposed, and this is idea of like why I'm not even putting too much energy to cancel Karen, is that, again, it's this idea of whack-a-mole of all that has to happen is someone just says, oops, I'm sorry, my bad, I apologize, I'm stepping away, and all done, right? The quote goes, modern food media prioritizes a certain kind of creator, American, read white, with just enough quirk to be accessible to an imagined white millennial audience. And going back on that idea of the new frontier that Karen is looking to explore, I want us to look at another new frontier. Actually, I want us to look at this photo. It's a painting. This here is my last point. And this is a painting that I came across while watching Exterminate All the Brutes on HBO Max by Raoul Peck. This is a painting, or this is a lithograph, by Currier and Ives, done in 1866. All right. And I wanted to point it out because Raoul had a really interesting explanation. Because when you look at this painting, you see that the description is about, European immigrants who are traveling and, moving, expanding, pushing the border, adventuring off, taking a journey into the United States. And when you read it like that, when you look at this image as just, look at this serene background of, snow-kissed mountains and lush green forests and, just a caravan of European colonizers peacefully making their journey off into the distance. But oh wait, you look at the corner over there and you see two indigenous people just watching, just looking, just observing, as if, oh, hey neighbor, see ya. And one of the things that was really profound that Raoul said was the significance of a painting like this is that it completely warps in our minds what we think happened during this expansion into America. Because photos like this paint the image as if the way history happened was European colonizers came to the United States and they just found land. And that indigenous people were just there and they're just like, okay, you're here, you take the land, okay, I'm going to stand in my corner over here. Which completely erases the systemic genocide, the deliberate extermination of these people, millions of these people, from their indigenous and native land. And so the implication is that, adventurers and curious minds, they're all traveling to these uncharted territories on a quest to transform the barren lands into these sprawling cities. But what exactly is the reality? The reality is European colonizers expanded their presence through the genocide of indigenous American people from their native land. And they used the American frontier and manifest destiny as the brand positioning, as the validation, as the justification for their dehumanization of indigenous people and indigenous land and indigenous culture. And that, folks, is all I have to say for today's episode of Office Hours. We pretty much finished on the dot. I started about 5 minutes late and I ended like on the dot. But yeah, that is our discussion on the Congee Queen and how, you know, we started off with just this tweet of seemingly just this Karen who called herself the Queen of Congee, and you realize that this thing blossomed into, I don't want to say necessarily blossom because that's, you know, this unanimously positive connotation, but it unfurled. This adventure unfurled into something very interesting where, you know, you start off just dealing with a Karen, and then you learn about the connection between these Oriental medicine schools and acupuncture and the history of acupuncture and the way that, you know, the Black Panthers have used acupuncture and the way that, you know, this type of colonization happens throughout multiple industries and the way that, you know, Asian people have been pushed out of these industries. Whew. A lot to talk about. And I'm glad that we covered it all. And I want to thank everybody here for hanging in there, for enjoying our conversation and participating. Again, I'm sorry I didn't have a lot of time to read everybody's comments. We just had so much to get to, and I didn't want to be over the time limit. But yeah, connect a lot of dots. I will be sharing this over on YouTube. So if you missed the replay, you can either watch it in its entirety, including all the segments before, like the announcements and what's on your mind. If you're interested in watching all of that, you can go ahead and watch it on Facebook. But if not, I will have it available on YouTube by tonight. So let me go ahead and thank everybody here who participated. If you haven't commented recently, I can only see the people who commented. So drop a line. I'll say goodbye. Let me go ahead and say goodbye to Emily, to Jennifer, to Monique, to Gina, to Mariposa, to Kundan, to who else do we have here? To Victoria, Melissa, who else? Edward, Ella, Leon, who else? Kefra, and Renell. So thank you. Oh, and thank you, Adia, and thank you, Kat. All right, folks. I hope you all have a fantastic Monday. There's a lot of fun stuff coming down the pipeline here on LLAG. Thank you, Elizabeth. So yeah, I enjoyed you all. Thank you. And I will see you next week. Be safe. Take care. Wear a mask. Pandemic's still going on. What the hell are you all doing? Be safe out there. Take care of yourselves. Get vaccinated if you can. And I will see you all very soon. I love you. Bye, everybody.